Welcome to season 2, episode 5 of the Dan and Doug Show. Today we're pulling bridges off of guitars. Um, we have we're going to continue doing things with the D&D show where we kind of do deep dives on smaller subjects in the hope that these don't wind up being 6 hours long. We try to focus our attention to a smaller subject each time so we can do a deeper dive on that subject rather than trying to cover everything under the sun on a general topic, which got into being some marathon shows. So we're going to try to do it this way moving forward. So we decided with Ian that this was kind of turning into, like, bridge summer. Because he's going to have a demonstration coming up with his new 3D printed um, bridge contraption and clamp that he's been working on with Roadman. Uh, we talked about bridge slots last month, so we figured we would continue the theme of dealing with bridges. We all do bridges in our shop, obviously, in all of our respective shops. We all have to replace bridges, deal with bridge cracks and so forth and so such. So in everybody's shop, you're going to be pulling bridges at some point, and we thought it would be good to talk about just that subject. Um, and as I caution at the beginning of every D&D show, that there is no right way of doing things, and that's why we like to get a variety of opinions, because the way I do something might not be the way that Dan does something, or Dan might not do it the same way somebody else does it. And just because this is our way doesn't mean it's the right way. There are more ways to skin a cat than there probably are cats. Um, so with that, we've also decided that we're going to try to continue to get a variety of opinions and perspectives from different loots with different experiences for each episode. That's why it's going to be continuing to evolve this way, and we will have people joining us for to lend their expertise to whatever topic we're talking about. And to continue with, by the way, with the whole bridge theme, today we're talking about getting bridges off of guitars. Next time we're talking about putting bridges on guitars. So so we'll be able to kind of continue with that theme. And next time, Bo Hannum's going to be joining us to talk about some tips and tricks and some magic that he performs. But today's guests, we have a pretty wide panel of guests here. We got Sharon Proper, she's right over there. She's muted now because our microphones were failing. So I'm the only one who gets to talk, which is usually the case in our shop. um, but Sharon's over there. We're going to take a look at her bench in a minute. We got Dave Stouty from Texas, and also a 24-year veteran of Taylor Guitars, among other things. How are you, Dave?
I'm good, Doug. Thank you.
And we got Luke Heaton, appropriately named for taking bridges off of guitars, from Whittlesticks and Strings. Is it Whittlesticks and Strings, or just Whittlesticks?
Just Whittlesticks. Someone took it on Instagram, so I had to use Whittlestick Strings.
Oh, okay. So Whittlesticks. I've been dying for months to ask you where that comes from.
So the name actually is from my dad came up with it, because originally I was just a violin shop, so we were going to call it Fiddlesticks. But when you type that online, you get 5 million hits of different things. And so we thought, well, since I am Carbon, he said, let's try Whittlesticks, and got no hits. And so we're like, hey, that's it.
Okay.
So that's where it came from.
That's fair enough. So you're in Utah.
Yeah, Southern Utah.
Okay. And you are, unlike the rest of our panel, you are and I hesitate to call it stringed instruments, but I guess that's what we call a bowed instrument.
Yeah. So I started in violin making school. So that's I didn't start on guitar stuff until 2008. Really, okay. I mean, like I dabbled in a little before then,
Uh-huh.
But I really didn't start in guitars till then.
Okay. Um, so you got a foot in both camps, and would you say you're doing like 50-50? Is it because I see
Yeah,
lots of guitars coming through your place as well.
yeah, I do. Well, I started the guitars just because I'm in a small town and I needed to diversify to stay afloat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where that came from. And then, yeah, nowadays it's about, it depends on the time of year. Like this time of year, it's pretty much just guitars. Hit August, I will hardly touch a guitar for, a month and a half when I'm just working on all the orchestral stuff, getting it ready.
Is that for
That's
all like the original contracts and the school contracts and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, that's actually starting Monday, those, but just like private stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just went through a school yesterday and counted up, and I have 103 instruments to work on next week. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it's
I'm
it's a
glad
grind. It's fun.
glad it's not this week. I'm glad it's
Yeah,
not this week, so you had the time to join us. And
yeah.
you're also your shop is also a Martin warranty center.
I'm Martin certified, and then the Silver Taylor certified.
Okay. Cool. And speaking of Taylor, we got Dave Stoudy, who spent 25, 24, something like that years in the trenches over at Taylor. How many of those years were in the repair department?
19 years,
Wow. Okay.
solid 19 years. So I
So
pulled some bridges.
yeah, I can bet you have, and that's why you're here today. Um, so before we start actually talking about the tools, the techniques, and all of that type of stuff, um, we like to do some as part of these episodes. We like to do some live luthing. Today we've got some video live luthing and some live luthing. Um, when we first talked about discussing this subject of pulling bridges, of course, we couldn't think of a more boring thing to watch than pulling a bridge because it's God knows how long of just letting the thing heat up, and then there's like 3 minutes worth of either adventure or misadventure, and then it's off. So we were originally not gonna do a demo, but because I couldn't imagine just watching just that. But we decided that that's going to take place. So Sharon, who is the person who does actually most of the bridge pulling in our shop, because I don't have the patience for it. I get too what would be the phrase? I get I get too anxious about getting it off quicker, and bad things happen to guitars. She has a much more measured approach to getting a bridge off. She's actually going to be doing the bridge pulling. I think I can go over there. We're going to take a look around Sharon's setup, and then she's her uh, and then her bench is going to remain. Um, I just lost it. I just did something wrong where it disappeared. Bear with me. I'm being producer of this at the same time. So okay, here we go. So we are going to take a look around Sharon's bench, and before we start yapping about bridges, we're going to take a look at her setup, and then she's going to actually go ahead and start pulling a bridge, and um, then we're going to leave her camera up pinned in the corner while the rest of us are talking while she's going ahead and pulling this bridge. It's going to be, you know, a while of her doing that, and like with any bridge, you never know how quick they're going to come. So if her bridge starts coming off quicker than we expect, she'll interrupt us and we can actually watch it come away. Um, yeah, it's very exciting. If well, as they can hear from me, my microphone's right over here. So as she's pulling it, she's going to let us know what's going on. And we'll check back in from time to time as we're talking about bridges and looking at other things. But this is the setup we typically use. Here you've got a guitar in the workstation, and we might actually be able to use this when we're talking about runout because I can see the different colors here. I didn't think that was going to show up on Zoom, but she's got a guitar in the workstation so she can work from both sides of the guitar. This stuff here that's on this little table is most of her bridge removal tools. Those are usually resident on her bench. This is Sharon's bench.
Well, the hot plate goes up here.
Hot plate normally goes up there, and she's normally pulling either here or there, but we moved everything over here just so it could be close up for the thing today. She's got a hot plate going with these Brown's irons that we like to use, and we'll talk more about these when we're talking heat. I'm going to take this back over with us. She's got her myriad of spatulas and whatnot. She's got an iron over here, a heat gun over here, or whatever they call it, an infrared heat gun, and she's got the whatever this is called, the scraper for getting stuff off. She's also got this puppy. We'll show you a little bit later. So that's her kind of setup, and that's where she's getting ready to operate. So we are going to set this up here. Did you want this way or this way? This way, right? We'll set that up there.
Yeah, it looks good.
So we will have that positioned. I don't know if I can zoom in or not. How's that? Looking good?
Yeah, that looks clear.
Okay, so that, yeah, we're going to leave that up while the rest of us are chatting. And if something exciting happens, she'll let us know. There we go.
This is cool.
I like what I see Sharon doing. She's doing it exactly how I would do it.
Tell me what you're seeing, because Sharon can't talk right now.
Well, she obviously knows the run out of the top. She's starting on the corners, which is exactly what I would do with the Taylor bridge. She's with the run out, she's going the right direction. Yeah, exactly. I would do the same thing.
Well, you have the Dave Stouty seal of approval, which is good enough for me. So now we have our full Brady Bunch box. Let's talk about. I want to just kind of go round robin, and let's talk about the tools. So, do you want to do that video that you have first, Dan?
It's up to you guys.
Let's do that video
It's
first.
very short.
Yeah, it's like a 3-minute video. I think I can do a share screen, right?
Here's a 1953 Gibson LG2 3/4 size that I'm taking the bridge off of. I drill a hole in the pearls to get them out. This one came out real easy. This one's coming out tougher. I take the drill bit and put it in the hole and pry it out, but it wouldn't come. So I'm putting some water down into it and heating it with a soldering iron, and there it goes. Then I can get out the screws. Get the saddle out of the way so I can put a heating pad on top. That's a Watlow pad, 1 inch wide, the same size as the bridge. And I'm going to clamp it down and heat it up. I put a thermometer on top of it, a surface thermometer, and I think it was about 180 degrees. Then some Danny West double stick tape on top of low tack tape on the finish. And then I stick the piece of Teflon to the top. And that'll protect me when I'm getting in there with my spatulas. It will bear against the Teflon. If there's any warmth on it, it won't affect the finish, and it's slippery. It's 20 thousandths thick. And this is gonna come off in a second, I can just tell you right now. I had filler gauges under it, way up underneath the bridge pinholes earlier. There's only a skin of spruce fibers on the bottom of the bridge. It's mostly hide glue. This is a folded up piece of paper towel that I'm getting soaking wet with very hot water from a hot water pump. And I'm going to take the hot water bowl there and sort of iron that and put some heat down into it and squash that down. Get it deep into those fibers so I can scrape it off. It was a little bit hard going there, so I put some de-glue glue on it, and that really juices it up and it starts coming off fine. A lot of scraping. I'm getting down to clean bare wood, but I decided to put a little bit more of that de-glue glue on there and just make a little slurry of it and then rinse it off with a damp rag after letting it sit for a minute. I'm almost done. It's down to dry wood now and quite clean. The last little scrape with the chisel, and then I'll clean it up with some acetone on the bottom. Get anything off that rosewood, and it's ready to glue back on. And here it is glued on with hide glue. And I've used a couple of new clamp fixtures that I've got to thank Ian Davlin and Jamie Robin and all the people on the Luth group that have gotten me to use a 3D printer. And I just got the new bamboo printer and was able to make these little cawls out of plastic that index on the bridge pin holes and fit right together. And if you work quickly, you can use them and get the job done with hide glue. Thanks for watching.
That was great, Dan. Oh, and we're back, all 6 of us. I was hoping I didn't have to do that. So if we turn our attention quickly to the upper left-hand screen, we can see Sharon's now moved on to heating that bridge. She can't speak from over there, and I promise I didn't do that on purpose. But one of the things I would ask about, and I might have to go over there so she can speak. One of the things I would ask about is, I noticed when Dave was commenting on you getting under the bridge wings, you were doing that without heat, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Why do you do that without heat?
because I hate heating up the bridge wings because a lot of times it burns and it really stinks to have to clean that up off the bridge. I don't like it, and it just because
You were
it's so
just you were
thin
just
there.
testing.
I
how-
test,
yeah,
I
how
go
far you
around
could get in.
slowly. I
Okay.
don't just jam it in there. I
Mhm.
just, kind of whittle my way in there, eke around slowly. And I got pretty far in on either side, as, as comfortable as I felt. And I stopped when I started to feel uncomfortable. So the heat, will travel out to there and I didn't have to burn the wings. But sometimes that's unavoidable.
Okay.
You got them in here, you can't even get anything under there. This worked out well.
Excellent.
So here's what temperature are you taking those irons to? I noticed you had a thermometer when you started.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the temperature with the irons in a little bit when we talk about
Okay.
heat. I know your name is Luke Heaton, but calm down, damn it. So, Dan, that was a great video of showing the process. So you're using. I want to go round robin and have each one of you talk about your preferred set of tools that you're using these days for bridge removal. So let's start with Dan. Is it what we just saw?
It could be what you just saw. It could be what Sharon's doing right now.
So
Only
you
those-
are you
those would
using
be
the
the
brown
only-
irons as well?
Do what?
Are you using those Browns irons as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I like them. I don't have 2 burners at once. I crowd them in on one. But I'm thinking of getting a double burner because it makes sense.
Yeah. That burner, we're going to look at that in a minute. We've had that in our shop for 35 years and hasn't quit yet. So,
That's pretty
go ahead.
much it.
Okay. So what about like the spatula I saw you using in there what was that was that a StewMac thing?
What thing?
The spatula you're using in that little video.
The same things that Sharon has.
Okay.
I have tons of them.
Right.
I have all the same ones I saw on her bench. And more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, do you want to see? Well, we'll do that in a second. Well, we're talking about removal tools. Let's go take a peek at Sharon's drawer.
She has a lot of nice artist palettes.
This is Sharon's drawer for doing just that. You know, she likes the StewMac ones, but her favorite are these small.
Felt knives, those, yep.
Yeah, the small.
They're thinner.
Yeah, they're thinner. They're a little bit more flexible. This is Kason. These I think StewMac used to sell, but I get these from a company called Rexart, and they're dirt cheap. You know, we get them in boxes of 10 at a piece. So we get them in boxes, and as soon as they start going bad, we chuck them and use them for other things.
I buy them by the hundreds.
Yeah, this is another thing we love to do with them, where we can bend. They're nice because you can bend the handle into a pull knife as opposed to a push knife. But that's her draw for that stuff. Oops.
Doug, what's the number on that palette knife?
The round one.
Yeah.
The round one is. Can you see that? Kason
848.
Kason 848. That and the one that most people are familiar with from StewMac is the old Kason 881. That's that one. But we like a variety of them. You know, they make lots of little ones that are nice, little guys that are. Yeah,
I like those little ones that Sharon was starting out with.
Exactly. So that's her draw. I'm not allowed in here.
Get out.
But I get the rest of the drawers. So that's her draw. I get all the rest. So let's go to Danny West because he's wearing the right apron for this episode. So what you recently what are you using for bridge removal?
These days, I'm using a heat lamp, and
Okay.
to be honest, I don't have that as much experience with this as I do with a heat blanket. I just recently switched because this died.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been using this, and then I picked up this tip from Gene at StewMac. Double reflective bubble insulation.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about heat in a minute because I have a lot of questions for both you and Luke about heat lamps because I've never been a huge heat lamp user. I was when I first started, and to tell you the honest truth, it created more heat in my pants than it did on the bench because it just scared the Jesus out of me. So I quickly moved on to other methods. But let's come up to Dave Stouty. What's your preferred arsenal for removing bridges?
For heating,
Yeah. Well, for just removal and heat
removal. Well, at Taylor, imagine a big block that has the bridge aluminum block on
Look
one
at
side.
that.
Now, pretend this is a piece of aluminum.
Did they let you take that home, or did you have to sneak it home in your box?
No, they actually I didn't sneak it home. They sent me one.
Oh, good.
So imagine if these two pieces were aluminum,
Yeah.
and we had a heater that we would turn on first thing in the morning to 265.
You're talking about like the low type heaters? The
It
ones.
was a watt load, had a probe in here that was the heating element and the thermostat.
Oh, okay.
So you could just do the fingerboard or the bridge. It was ready to go all day long. It was just on all day long.
Oh, so you got a fingerboard. The one on top is for fingerboards.
Yeah, imagine if this was all aluminum. So this is what we had at Taylor.
So you just made a
Like
heat
your-
stick in the morning and just left it on the bench heating up.
Yeah,
all
so
day.
you just walk over there, grab the glove and put your bridge on or your fingerboard. It was ready to go.
Okay.
I don't have that luxury here, so I use the move my camera down. I use the LMI blanket, and then I will just put some weights on it, just like Dan did. He has that piece of aluminum that he put over the bridge to hold the heater down, right?
Yep.
So I'll do something like this, and then I'll start getting it warm, and I'll just move it over to the wings, and I'll get one wing hot. And believe it or not, you think Taylor is super sophisticated with all their tools and everything? We just used a 4-inch spatula.
Oh boy, look at that sucker.
You had to make your own. So
Damn.
this is like, well, maybe $4 or $5 at Home Depot. It might be like 10 now, but you would.
It doesn't get that cold in San Diego, so you don't need that something like that to
No.
scrape the ice off your windshield either.
Well, you had to make your own. We all made our own. This goes back to the Bob Taylor starting in 1974. You would just trace this shape on the spatula,
Okay.
if you can see that.
Yeah.
You go to a grinding wheel, grind it out to this shape, take it over to a sander like this. Oh. Put on a glove and just start thinning it out.
Wow.
And then you go through a couple grits, and then you start sanding it with like 800, 600 with your whatever sander you have, orbital or random orbit, until you get it nice and thin so it's flexible. So this,
And each guy in the repair department had to make their own.
we all made our own.
Is that
And
just
it's nice
because-
and flexible.
that
And it
just
becomes
because-
very, very sharp around the edge. Now, when you're sanding this and thinning it out, it takes a while. It takes probably over an hour to get it polished up nice. If it starts to turn blue, you got it too hot. So you want to
Right.
keep a spray gun water bottle to keep it cool. This one still works fine. It's got nice flex to it, though, if you could see that.
Hmm. So
And
you
it
did
finished
did you at least get to take this home when you left with you, or did it was just-
This one I did take home because I put a decal on it.
okay?
And I didn't want anyone to steal it, so I put DS on it.
There you go.
So this is what we use, and we just, like Sharon's doing, we would go in through the corners. I'd have to just, and then work your way around. Being careful of the run out, whatnot.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's what we used. Just a 4-inch painter's putty knife.
Wow. Now you each the logic behind each one of you making your own wasn't just because Bob's a mean boss and didn't want to buy you tools because they spent a lot of money on tools.
Can
So
you
what-
show us that thing, that aluminum part again? The top,
Oh, this one, didn't I send you one of these, Dan?
uh-uh,
Oh, I sent you a clamp. I thought I sent you one of these.
uh-uh.
No, you didn't send me one
Wow.
either.
That's
Well,
interesting. That's what I want to make on the 3D printer, just to clamp it down. Like TJ Thompson has calls that fit his bridge perfectly, and you can clamp it down. I want to make that. I know I couldn't do it out of aluminum. So you made that on a CNC.
no, this is from Taylor.
Yeah, but didn't they make it there in the factory
Oh, yeah.
on a CNC?
It's got a little index for the saddle. so that,
That's hard to make by hand though.
oh yeah. So that little pin goes in the saddle
It's awesome.
slot, and then these flex, you can see the.
So is that just?
So if I'm taking off a Taylor bridge, I'll just put this heating element right on here, and it gets even heat over the whole thing.
Yep.
But like we just saw in Dan's video, he had a great piece of aluminum. You know, I'm using these just chunks of big nuts. Put a piece of aluminum on the top. Doesn't matter what it is, or steel, anything. Get
The
your
piece
heat.
I use is one of the Stumac. I think they still make them. It's a bridge gluing caul of aluminum.
Yeah.
Threaded inserts for the feet. I just took those parts off because it was a small bridge.
Transfer the heat evenly across. When I'm working with a bridge like Sharon, you know, she's got the heat in the middle, so I'm actually moving it from either side. So that's how I do it.
That's the way I do it.
And 265 was what our Watlow was set at Taylor, and we would turn that thing on in the morning. It would stay on all day. So it was ready to go.
This is a Taylor one, isn't it? Or no?
Oh, that looks like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Looks like they're part numbers. Yeah. Yeah, you put that on the bridge and then put your Brown's heater on top of that, and you get full heat across.
They sent me this back when we first became a warranty center for the clamping call for the bridges. It never actually dawned on me to use this for heat, like until today. Where were you 25 years ago?
Aluminum transfers heat really good and removes really good.
That's the whole idea behind this. But I never dawned on me to use this. You know? Okay.
Can
Luke,
I ask a quick question?
be my guest. Yeah.
Dave, are you using a temperature controller?
Yeah, I have the old LMI, the Watlow thing.
Okay.
I really, you know, you got to put that little probe under the.
Yeah, it's a hassle.
Got to touch, so you got to kind of keep an eye on it. It is a hassle.
Yep.
It's not too difficult to get up to a better grade where you can integrate the thermostat with the Watlow, but it takes someone smarter than me, like Jamie or.
And did I hear you say you like 265, or that was just at Taylor? What do you like to do in your shop now?
That's what I do in my shop too. 265.
265. Okay.
And I'll actually, I don't use a heat gun or anything. I'll just reach inside, and when I start to feel the pin plate get warm, I just kind of know how warm it needs to be. At Taylor, we would put a 265. We all had a timer on our bench. We would set it for 15 minutes.
Okay.
And you'd come back to your bench. Sometimes if the bridge was giving you trouble, you'd reach under there and say, is it hot under there? Well, maybe it's not hot enough. What's going on? And you put it back on for another 5 minutes or so. But if you reach under and feel warm, you know, not hot, but warm, you know, you're definitely getting close.
Okay. Thank you.
If anybody ever wants
There we
to get together and order some Watlow heaters from Watlow, that's what Brian and I did years ago, but there's a pretty good size minimum order. I need to have some made because some of mine the wires have ripped out of them.
So yeah, that's an interesting thought to do that. We had the opportunity. I had a customer who, 35 years ago, was a sales rep for Watlow, and I let that one slide right by without ever, because he offered to get me whatever I needed, but it just at the time it seemed like an expensive proposition. We're going to talk. We're going to ask Luke what his preferred removal tools are, but before we do that, we're going to take a quick peek over at Sharon's progress here, because I noticed she's getting under this puppy, and it seems to be coming pretty quick. So just a quick mention about the Brown's heating irons. This is the way we use them. With these, they're probably fairly well known by people. These things will work well for, watch your hand, for fingerboard extensions, you know, doing that way. They also work for bridge tops. I have a tendency to walk away. Sharon hates when I do that, which is another reason why she pulls all the bridges. But they'll index on the top fairly nice. I actually use them to heat the corners. She hates when I do that too. But so she's heating the bridge, and I noticed, if we move this aside for a minute, that you are starting to get under the bridge. Let's take a look at your progress so far.
Yeah, I'm up to, let me get the bigger. Push up lift.
And sorry if I missed it. What are you guys using for a heat source?
At our shop, we're using the Brown's irons on a heat plate.
Just okay.
So that's all we do. That's all we've ever done. Now, there's a couple
Okay.
of tricks to doing this. Is that, where's your heated iron?
They're both,
These are both on.
yeah, it's just
Okay.
the big plate is on.
So this one here is what are you heating these up to on the?
On the thermometer, it's got to get near 500
But today you're getting it up to about 400 or 500?
for 400.
Or 450?
The unit itself.
Yeah. So here's the funky thing about this. These things will get, the iron will heat with the thermostat that's a surface thermometer. They'll register all the way up to about 400 degrees because the aluminum is getting super hot. And for years, we used to try to control the heat because we would do exactly what Dave is talking about, you know, getting in about the 250, 270 degree range, and we would heat the irons to 250 degrees and then put them on a bridge. And it would take, you know, what felt like months to have that get hot enough till we realized, let me put this here, till we realized, give me the gun, that the iron, if I'm measuring the iron, this one wasn't all the way up yet, but this one is a lot cooler than it's registering on at the heat source. So that's reading about 450 degrees on the thermometer. And then if I go quickly to my bridge and I measure the iron at the bridge, I'm only reading, in this case, it's going to go up to probably about 200 and some odd degrees. I don't know if that's getting in there, and I'm not staying centered on it, but I'm getting up to about 200 degrees, now 175 or so. And the bridge itself is much lower. So we get the irons pretty hot, and that winds up, after the transfer of heat, being fairly innocuous at the bridge. So we wind up going pretty hot here. So we're actually heating these on the plate with the surface thermometer up to anywhere from 400 to 500 degrees, which transfers only to about half that when you're sitting on the bridge. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're using surface thermometers, they are notoriously suspect when it comes to telling the truth, kind of like politicians. But so here, let's take a look at Sharon's progress. Now she's been working this side of the bridge, and she's been working just this way because her grain orientation on this is this way on this side of the top and this way on this side of the top. We'll talk about grain run out in a minute. But you can notice that she's worked her way in from the side, and now she's already coming out. I don't know if I can get any closer. There we
You can
go.
see the, blade.
You can always already see the blade is coming out here, and she's worked her way under pretty well, and she's able to get all the way across up to that point. So she's about halfway through the bridge at this point, and it's not taking altogether that much to get it off. Just a little bit of gentle heat, and just making sure she's working with the grain. And for this period of guitar, was probably a mid to early 70s D35. That point they would have been using the white glue. Any questions regarding that? Let me center this back here.
It'd be nice if we could everybody would put together their thoughts on what kind of glue was used what years at Martin or anybody else.
Yeah, it was sometime, if I'm not mistaken, it was sometime during the 60s that the transition from hide to white glue took place. I don't know exactly what year. Maybe somebody like Pat DeBurrow would know.
Yeah.
So, Luke,
Yes, sir.
talk about tools that you like to pull a bridge with.
So I use, as far as the palette knives and stuff, just like what you guys use, I use the larger, palette knives. I like the diamond shape
Okay.
personally.
All right.
And then I also, those are the other two that I like to use, just kind of same ones you guys are using.
Mhm.
And I always use them in pairs. So I normally, like when I pull a bridge, I'll actually start one on both sides at the same time and actually just use two knives
Well,
at
you
the
can
same
see
time and
Sharon-
then
you can see
work my
Sharon's
way
got-
front and back.
Yeah, you can see Sharon's got two knives going right now, where she's got one knife holding up a section of the bridge, and she's working her way across with another
Yeah,
knife.
but I'll actually have one in each hand at the same time and actually just work them
Oh, okay.
together.
You
But then again, so I use the heat lamp.
you drink two
Um,
beers at once too?
What's that?
You drink two beers at once too?
No, no, I'm afraid I'm too sober for that. But because where I use the heat lamp, so just like Dan, I use it's the red bulb. You can also get them in clear, the
Mm-hmm.
250 watt. This guy,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the whatever it is. Yeah, just reflector infrared. So it's what they use for like keeping chicks warm and stuff like that. So you like any like ranch store, anything like that will have those, and they're cheap. They last forever.
You also use those to keep the fries warm at McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. Same bulb.
Now I
And I just
have
put it.
I have a couple of those, and I remember early on. So now let's jump into talking about heat, because heat is obviously the most important tool for pulling a bridge. The um, the magic solution for any bridge that's giving you a hard time is automatically, as far as I'm concerned, telling you that you're not using enough heat. So we already quickly looked at the um, Browns heat. I don't know if you can hear all that noise coming from upstairs. Hopefully not. But the Browns irons is all we've ever used, probably for the last 35 years. Before that, I do have, and I still have them from years ago. I still have these heat lamps that the first bunch of bridges I pulled when I was young and inexperienced in this business was heat lamps, and I presume that's something that a lot of people do as their opening gambit, because they're not obviously expensive. So you don't have a big expense in terms of like a heat controller and bridge blankets and all of that type of stuff, which is why I never got into the Watlow thing. I'd seen it. I remember when LMI first came out with its heat controller and those blankets, and I ogled them in their paper catalog when there was a paper catalog. And it was just always seemed to be to me to be a bit out of my reach in terms of for an expense at that time, um, I was newer in the business and doing a whole lot less bridges, and B, it just seemed like a big lift to get there to get all of that stuff in order. Every time a bridge came in, somebody came in with a bridge reglue to do, and it would just kind of easier to just pull out a bulb, stick it in a socket, turn on a lamp, and wait for the room to get warm. But it was also the the method that I liked least because it made me feel very, very queasy every time I did it. Just the idea of projecting that much radiant heat at a guitar, and I used the cardboard with wrapped in foil and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. It was. Can you talk to me about heat with heat lamps? Because I know you're a big heat lamp guy.
Yeah.
So why do you use it? What's your experience with it? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I started using them in, in violin making school because in the violin world, you use them to, like, pull apart everything, and I just like them because of the consistent heat. Like, I have the little rubber blanket, like Dave's using and Danny's used, and, because when I first saw those listed from, like, LMI, I was like, "Oh, that's the new thing. That'll be so much better than the, heat lamp," and I always had a very mixed react like, I'd use it one time and it worked great, and the next time I'm, like, scorching the bridge before it got hot enough, to pull it, and I never really had that with the heat lamp because I guess I just knew how to run it better, but, for me, as I always set it about, a foot, 10 inches to a foot above the guitar. I use just cut out the cardboard, just use a sheet of aluminum foil over the top to reflect the extra heat off and try to get it, close to the outline of the bridge, and then I set a timer for 5 minutes and, let it go for 5 minutes, full 5 minutes, come back, start at the corners because the whole bridge is getting hot at once. And, if I can get the knives under there easily, then I'll just keep going. If I start and it's hard to push them in, then I'll just set the timer again for like 4 minutes, walk away and come back, and just kind of I just let the bridge let me know when when it's got hot enough, and it's always worked good for me because it's like if you have the tight bonds or whatever that need to be a little hotter, you just let it go a little longer, and then
Hmm.
at some point, I've always just found at some point, after 2 or 3 different cycles of that, you'll be able just to stick the knife under it and it'll just slide under, and you can just, like I said, with the two knives, I can work from the front and the back, so I'm not diving in as much, and just kind of slowly work my way across the bridge, and it'll almost always pop off clean.
So the
And
the two
I do the same thing with the fretboard extensions.
yeah, okay. So the two questions I have with that, because the one drawback that the bronze iron has is one, the aluminum cools pretty quickly once it's off your heat source. So that's why you see that we have two or three of these, um, so that once it's starting to cool, I can grab the other one and switch
Hmm.
and put this one back on the heat and keep rotating them that way if I need more heat. So there is kind of an added expense. So we just accumulated more over the years. We have three of them now, I think. Um, and that solved that problem for us. With heat, radiant heat from the bulb, the two questions I have are this: one, you're after your 5 minutes, you turn off the heat. How quickly is your bridge cooling down? Because the one thing, from your experience from the violin world or the bowed instrument world, is that all of that stuff is designed to come apart with heat because it's all glued together with hide glue. The
Hmm.
backs, the sides, and it's the tops and
Everything.
sides, everything. So if you're not careful about protecting the rest of the instrument from heat, you've got other seams that are potentially moving on you. In my perception of it, I could be wrong. But
Yeah. Yeah.
when you're doing that to a guitar and you've got, say, your mask around the bridge area that's from your lamp above the top, if you're sticking your hand inside the guitar, how hot is the inside of that guitar getting?
I can usually just put my hand, like I've done some testing with like the cardboard and stuff like that. And like when you stick your hand just under the cardboard, so in between the cardboard and the top will be cold. It might be slightly warm, but
Hmm.
there is no, especially because that aluminum foil reflects the infrared so well that it really doesn't transfer past just a thin layer of cardboard. Like
Hmm.
one layer is enough.
Okay.
I've done, like right now I'm making one. So this is an old guitar top from like the 70s. So this is a poly finish, but I'm actually going to cut a bridge, a kind of a Martin style bridge cut out here. And then this is the one I already used for the fretboard extensions. So I actually just set this right on the guitar, and I don't even bother, with the foil on this one. Just
So
because
that's going to become your mask.
yeah, this will just be my mask. Just an old
Okay.
guitar top from the, 70s or whatever, and so I just set it on there, hit the heat lamp on it, and set the timer and go.
Okay. And you've
So
never had.
it's really crazy that just one sheet of aluminum foil is such a barrier to a heat lamp because it's using infrared.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I just my perception of it early on was it just made me feel very uncomfortable.
It can
and
get out of hand. So I mean, like the
that's
very
why
first
I
time
thought,
I pulled a bridge with it, I didn't mask it. Like I didn't put the guard around it just because
you mean
out of ignorance.
on a guitar.
Yeah,
Okay.
the first time I pulled a bridge on a guitar, I didn't use any kind of masking. They're just not, out of ignorance. And
Mhm.
I came back 5 minutes later, and I have this big ripple of all the lacquer. So that was a very, it was a very expensive lesson, but one well learned.
You still own that guitar?
It was a junker,
Okay.
it was a junker that I'd had, and so it was just one of those where I was like, oh, I'm going to try this. And it was like, oh, got to do that now.
Mhm. So, all right. So that actually answers my second question in terms of because the first question was how soon, how fast do those parts cool down as soon as you withdraw the heat?
I mean, you've got a good, couple minutes, before they noticeably drop. They
Yeah.
get they get hot and they stay hot.
Okay.
It's, you got a couple minutes to work with it. And if it starts to cool down, if you notice the glue, like I've had some where they use like some sort of weird white glue and you have to have it, pretty hot to get it. And you'll notice it starting to, like, your knives will start to grab,
Hmm.
as you're trying to move them around, they stick. And so then I'll just put the guard back around it and just put the heat lamp back on it and let it heat back up for a couple minutes and then keep going.
Because the thing that appeals to me about the video we saw that Dan did with him using the Watlow heaters and Dave had demonstrated is that it seems to me that you drop your heat on that thing and it'll stay put while you're working your way around your bridge,
Mhm.
continue to constantly provide heat without having to let the bridge cool down. And because I know when I'm pulling a bridge that's with hide glue, that if I've gotten my way from, like Sharon's doing right now, she's working from the treble side over, she'll get to the other side, to the middle or so, and start heating the bridge. And if there isn't a knife in there, the reason why her knife is staying put is so that if she's got a guitar with hide glue, that the glue on the other end, the treble side that she's already relieved, doesn't re-gel. And then as she's going and pulling the bridge from the bass side, that it doesn't re-glue itself as it cools on the other side, and you wind
Mhm.
up, having to dance back and forth. So that's why you always see a knife sitting under there somewhere to keep the separation, so that the new heat doesn't gel. And now in this case, it's not going to be hide glue because it's a 70s Martin. But that's one of the things that always kind of appealed to me about the uh, the heat blankets. Um,
Mhm.
Are there limits with heat blankets to how much, Dave, how much heat you can apply?
Mm,
I've never found
You
out.
know, I haven't really experimented much over 300.
I think
But
I think the cap on 'em-
once I get that bridge heated up and I get those wings up. That bridge is off in less than a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Now,
mean- When it's hot enough, it should just come right off.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
sure. So, Danny, you recently made the change to a heat lamp,
Yeah,
um, out of frugality mostly.
pretty much.
So what is the difference that you're appreciating from the change? Because you've been doing it for a decade with the other.
Yeah, about a decade, maybe more like 8 years.
Okay.
Um, I've found that it does with the heat lamp, it stays hotter without the heat source because it's kind of like heated through as opposed to just something sitting on the surface.
You're
Um,
saying the heat lamp.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like
So, but let me ask you a question about that. Heated through to what? Heated through the top, the bridge top itself, or the thing that always bothered me, and maybe it was just one experience I had, maybe it was ready to go, but very early on, um, when I was heating bridges with a heat lamp, I would move the lamp, over the guitar. If the guitar was down here, here, this was my guitar, and there was my bridge. I would move the heat over that, and I had my bib on the guitar,
Mhm.
and it's heating. And I went off to do whatever else I was going to do while I was waiting for that to heat. And while I was across the bench, I heard an audible sound like that. And I'm looking around the guitar, and I didn't realize until I moved the guitar that the bridge plate just dropped out of the bottom of the guitar. And it may have been just that it was ready to go at the time, but I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm re-gluing the bridge plate, and it was high glue, and I guess it got hot enough radiant through the top that the bridge softened, and just the weight of the thing dropped on the guitar. And I said, okay, well, now I guess I'm either letting it get too hot, and then shortly after that, I kind of moved away from it because that was one of the experiences that I had with a heat lamp that led me, away from and looking for something else. And that's when I discovered these things. And that's what we've been using ever since. So I've always been, just as a matter of, well, that's how we did it and that's what we had. And it works well enough. So why look for something new? So when you say heated through, that then triggers my,
Mhm.
worries again about how much of the underside of the guitar am I heating? Is the underside of that guitar getting hot on the spruce side and then the bridge plate side if you leave it there long enough?
It's not getting hot. It's getting, warm, a little warm to the touch, about the same as it would if it was the heating blanket. That's kind of just what I know how it feels with the heating blanket, and I kind of aim for that. I'm usually aiming to heat the bridge around like 250 with the little radar gun,
Okay.
and it seems like it gets up and stays to temperature a little bit quicker, depending on you have a little bit more control, I think, as far as
And if you want it a little hotter, you get a little closer. If you
Yeah.
want it a little cooler, you get a little. I could have been, like I said, I was young and stupid at the time, so I could have been too close to the guitar.
Yeah, another
You know.
thing that I um, use to kind of judge things is smell. Like I feel like you want to be able to smell
Hmm.
a little something, but you don't want to smell too much oils, or like I feel like that's a good
Do you see
You
plumes?
definitely will.
The plumes
It's
of
getting
smoke
close.
coming out.
Sure.
You don't want to see the oils leaching out of.
Well, no smell and visual. The rosewood bridges will, once I get them up to
They'll bubble.
temperature, they'll start sweating out sap and oils.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ebony, not so much.
Right.
Ebony will start to get like a glossy, shiny. There's ebony's a weird how it holds its moisture and releases it, and but when it gets shiny, you know you're getting close.
Okay.
And like Danny said, reach under there and feel the bridge plate. It's starting to feel warm. You don't want it to get hot, but it's same with the fingerboard.
Yeah.
You know, I don't use those heat guns, those sensors. I've tried those on bending sides in my side bender, and I can aim it at all different spots, and I'll get a range of 200 degrees.
Yeah.
I
And
don't think they're that accurate.
I
That's
actually
what we're doing.
I think it's being kind of almost hyper accurate because it's
It
really
might be good for like a motor repair or engine stuff, but
yeah. I just use
I don't
quick read.
rely on those at all.
Right.
Like Danny, I rely on smell and visual and
Mhm.
touch.
Smoke.
Smoke.
Once you see plumes of smoke coming up, you know that the guitar is done. So, Danny, which do you like better?
They both have their benefits. With the heating blanket, you're not having to monitor as much, like every 30 seconds. I feel like with the heat lamp, I kind of keep a close eye on it. With the blanket, you can kind of check it every few minutes and make sure that your coupling isn't malfunctioning and you don't have 500 degrees of heat out of nowhere.
So you find the heat lamp less stressful than the Watlow type thing?
No, not I monitor the heat lamp more.
Okay. So you monitor the heat lamp more than you do the Watlow.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my case, Kinovo.
Okay.
And I just use a router speed control and a thermocouple hooked up to my digital multimeter to
Right.
get temperature for that.
Okay.
But they both work.
Okay. I want to talk. There's a particular reason why Dave Stouty is here, because there's outside of the fact that he's a fabulous human being, there's a characteristic about Taylor bridges that are ubiquitous among them, that we refer to. Some people call it a pocketed bridge. It's the bridge rabbit. So when you're removing a guitar bridge with a rabbit, you got to do things a little differently, or at least you got to be aware of it, that it's there. And I have seen a fair amount of misunderstanding about the bridge rabbit out there in the world, social media and luthing, where people, consider that practice to be somehow, you always see some post about, hey, Taylor Guitars, thanks for the job security, as it relates to finish going underneath the bridge. And I've seen it. If I've seen it once, I've seen it, 5 dozen times. So can you talk about bridge rabbits in a way that's A, reassuring to all of us, and B, tell us what that's all about?
Well, I think there's two different things going on here, because Taylor, they built hundreds of thousands of guitars without the bridge rabbit.
Yeah.
Before we started doing that, And at the same time, when we did put the rabbet in, we were gluing flat ebony bridges on a radius top
Hmm.
without a rabbet for
Okay.
decades.
So when did
Um,
the rabbit start?
Well, when the CNCs obviously started, when would that be? Probably in 95 or so. But it wasn't until we didn't start the rabbit until the early 2000s.
Okay.
And at the same time, not only did we do the rabbit, but we started radiusing the underside of the bridge to match the radius of the top. So it was supposed to be like a mated joint. But here's
And
where there's two things going on here is we always left up until 2000, every guy that was building 4 guitars a day would route the finish off the top and glue his own bridge on. And you would
I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment because we have. Oh, okay. Never mind. Keep going.
we all hand routed the finish off with a laminate trimmer, the finish off the top of the guitar
Yeah.
up to, I mean, you tried to get it pretty close, around a 32nd of an inch. If you over routed, then you made a big problem. So some guys maybe left a little more or a little less. So there was always that rim of finish under the footprint of the bridge for up until 1999.
Okay.
And these are gluing flat ebony bridges on a radius top.
So when you glued the bridge down, you were in essence bending the bridge to the shape of the top.
Yeah. Until we let this, we bought more CNCs. I mean, the CNCs were doing as much as they could, and they got buying more and more and doing more processes. And then they started radiusing the bottom of the bridge and then putting the rabbet in it. But we glued hundreds of thousands of guitars with that rim of finish around the edge, which I think instead of inlaying it, scribing all the way around and removing all the finish, so the bridge is literally inlaid into the finish.
Right.
So that's one part. That's one way of doing it. The whole rabbet, the whole other thing is a whole different conversation. We have the inlaid bridge is one conversation that some people adhere to. And like you said in the beginning, there's no right or wrong way. And then we have leaving a little bit of finish around the edge and gluing on a bridge, whether it has a rabbet or not, flat or not, or radiused or not.
Right.
I've had deep discussions with other luthiers about this. I do prefer if you can leave like a 32nd of an inch of finish under the foot of the bridge.
Okay.
That finish, I mean, you want your finish thin on your top. If it's nitro, it's going to definitely be thin. Even if it's poly and you keep it thin, that's going to provide like a gasket when you glue that bridge on.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're cleaning up your glue around it, there won't be any water going in, and that finish is just going to crush right into the top. And that bridge is going to sit on there great the next day when you unclamp it. If you have an inlaid bridge where you cut all the finish around, which there's no right or wrong way to do this. If you're cleaning up around that bridge and you get any water in there, that grain's going to pop up and you're going to get wrinkles around the bridge.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of wrinkling around the bridge. I've seen that.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong way to do it. I prefer to leave a little gasket edge around there. Now, as that guitar goes out in the world and that top is moving up and down in heat and humidity or dryness or cold,
Yeah.
you're going to see little gaps, especially on a Taylor bridge.
Well, that was very common.
People see a tiny little gap under this little point.
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh, my bridge is coming off." We would take that in the factory the next day after on a brand new guitar, mix up some ebony dust and wood glue and just pack it in there, and no one would ever know.
Right.
And some of the worst bridges I unglued or removed in Denver, Colorado were guild bridges in the
Yes.
early 90s, where there was this, because Denver's dry, so the top is sunk. You see this seam around, a little tiny gap.
Mhm.
If you look at it, go, oh, your bridge is coming up. I go to take it off, and that thing is
You'll be there all
there.
afternoon. Yeah.
4 or 5 guild bridges about made me quit.
Yeah.
It's like I wish I would have just filled the gap instead. There's nothing wrong.
Well, that's the thing I discovered about guild bridges is that, and I don't know if this one, I need to grab a palette knife from a view over there.
I mean, we've all seen the bridge where there's like a 1/4 inch of finish under the footprint of the bridge. And so there's a huge gap. And the bridge is still pretty much on there on the cheaper import guitars. But
So for me, the telltale sign on, well, I'll just use this. It's not coming up, but if I find a little gap back here, and it's on a Taylor guitar, or a special, or if it's like you said, right in the corner, or if it's a guild, and I feel a dead stop point after I get entered into that gap, that's the glue joint that I'm running into, and that little 1/8 of an inch spot between, or a 32nd of an inch or whatever it is, around the whole bridge. If I'm getting in there, to me, that's not enough of a reason to try to talk a customer into or out of, or pulling a bridge or into pulling a bridge. I don't recommend a bridge pull at that point, just because I can feel, if I can feel the glue joint. My test is if this disappears, under the back of the bridge, and I get all the way up to the bridge pins without heat or anything like that, then I know I've got a bridge that needs to come up. If I get in there just a little, 16th of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch or 32nd of an inch, and I can feel that hard knock of the
Yep.
line that I'm getting around, then I know I've got a top that's more than likely bulged up behind the bridge. And to your point about um, a bridge that's inlaid in the finish, anytime you get those guitars that where the top bulges up and the front of the bridge dives forward a little bit, you're always going to have that snowplow effect of finish that buckles and crinkles along the front edge of the bridge. So there are pluses and minuses of both sides, in terms of why manufacturers do what they do. But if you're removing a bridge with a rabbet on it, since we now, our conversation then goes to the rabbet of the bridge, you have, when you get your knife in there, you have a step.
it's never made a difference. Me and everyone in the repair department, the bridges come off the same way,
Okay,
regardless of the rabbet.
well, that's my
Yeah.
experience as well.
Heated up to 265. That spatula, it usually just slides right in the corners. You work your way around. I like to show customers just a sticky note is the thickness, and if they get freaked out, that there's just this, not even 1/8 of an inch of gap there, but the rest of the bridge, as you hold it down, you can't slide it under. It's like, see, your bridge is fine. I can't get this under there. But they're worried about a tiny little gap on the corner. Like, well, I can reglue it, but it's not. I would advise against it.
Yeah.
But yeah, heat it up to 265. We would come in this corner, flip the guitar around. So you come in this corner, and work your way around the back. Just getting it in. Work your way around, I guess, the front. And then usually by that point, you can just go right almost halfway up the pins
Yeah, cross
flip
grade.
it around and it's off.
Yeah, and then you're not
And it
running.
almost takes
running-
that amount of time is what I just showed you
Mhm.
with that recipe.
Yeah. So,
Add something to the post-it note.
go ahead.
What's that?
I want to add something to the
Oh, yeah.
post-it note. What I'll do with customers is I'll, if I know the bridge is glued and it's just a little spot, I'll slide the post-it note under there, mark it with a pencil, and
Hmm.
give them the post-it note to keep it in their case and tell them to check it every once in a while. And if it goes
Oh.
significantly past that mark, call me.
That's awesome.
That's very clever.
That is a great advice. Because there are people that are worried about that.
Yeah.
If you can slide the post-it note, up behind a bridge and it's almost touching the bridge pins.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got a problem here.
Right.
We got gappage. And those are the people that don't even know and don't care. It's like your bridge needs to be glued. Look at this. It's the guy that's worried about, an eighth of an inch on the tip here. My bridge is coming off.
So, let's check in with Sharon before we go on to talk about grain run out. How are we doing, Sharon? Nobody can hear her because I'm not there yet.
Off.
We're off.
Wait, Chris,
Rough.
it's up, but there's a piece holding on a little, so I'm gonna
Okay.
twist. But I wanted to wait till you can.
Okay.
And there's
up.
where I felt
There
it.
you go.
She had a little bit of grain run out right here.
I
Let me
felt
see if
it,
I can get closer.
then a little more heat and it popped right up.
Yeah. So she mentioned to me before that when she thought it was coming up, that
Right here.
she felt she was coming up, but she had one spot right here where she had a little bit of grain run out that it was still holding on. It's a pretty clean pull. There's only a little bit of feathering going on here. This is, while it's still warm, we usually put it right on here. We have this little T-bar aluminum that I have one side fit for 2 1/8, the other side fit for 2 5/16. We got others that are 2 1/4 and what have you. These are threaded holes, so I can move these screws from here to there for whatever bridge I'm going to do. This holds a bridge for us, and I can come back with my hook and just pull that off and clean that up. I'm trying to remember what the name of this is. We call it the hook.
Yeah, cool down a little, but it doesn't say that.
Yeah. And that just cleans up in just a matter of minutes. So you can see all of that coming off. So that's pulling the bridge. Now we can talk about grain runout. And I think I was worried about Zoom, whether or not we could see this. Can we see, can you see the dark side and the light side on this?
Yeah, it's actually coming in pretty good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So we have dark side here. And now the dark side here.
How'd you do
So
that?
that tells us that our grain is running this way on this side, and this way on this side. The key for me to do this is when you do see it, and this is not very pronounced, but you see it enough, is that for me is the position of your light. And that's one of the reasons why we like using this station, because I get to spin the guitar and not move against the light. Because if I do a situation here where I'm moving back and forth, it's much more difficult to see because my position of what we would consider the sun to be has changed. And there I can see a darkness on the top on this side, but as I'm moving in a certain position, and that's what gets people into trouble because you don't necessarily see where the light and the dark is depending on your position of where you are against the sun or your light source. So I like to use a static light source that's going to give me the best look that I can get. And here we can see a dark side here because the light above is casting a shadow on the grain as it's running this way. And we're looking, the grain is casting a shadow that way because the light's coming from above and behind the guitar. And here we're seeing the reflection of the back end of the grain because you're not seeing the ridges. Is that right, Dave?
Yes, I'm not the expert. If Michael Bashkin and Michael Greenfield are still available, I'd love them to join us. Because Michael Bashkin, I think, is.
I'm still here.
Hey, cool.
This is, I mean, this is all great. Thanks everybody for participating. I started, as you all know, I started in repair, so I've been taking bridges off guitars for 45 years at this point. But, and still learning stuff, right? We're all still learning stuff, which is the wonderful thing about this group. Yeah, I mean, from what Doug just said, that's how I read grain out, run out.
Right. I was hoping Michael Bashkin was still here too, because he had a career in forestry before becoming a guitar maker. But I just had some a couple examples of, and I'm sure you know probably more about it than I do, Michael Greenfield. You know, we think of our trees. These trees that we use our tops, they grow in the northern latitudes of the planet, right? The pine trees, coniferous, firs, Doug firs, spruces are growing far from the equator.
Right.
I'm not an arborist. I'm not an expert on this. We all think, you know, the plants grow, all plants, you know, here's our tree, and they're growing up towards the sun, and they have all these fibers going up and down. They're actually like a tube of straws, like a cylinder of straws, of bringing nutrients up and down and photosynthesis. And then if we cut across our tree and we get our quarter-sawn board out of here through our rings, our annual rings, the light rings are the summer growth rings. They get fat when the tree is growing.
Can you hold it down a little bit more?
And the dark,
Or bring the, yeah, there we go.
the dark rings are the winter growth rings. And this is how we think plants grow. Most plants grow like this, but they all want to go towards the sunlight. So in effect, where these trees grow in the northern latitudes, they actually, instead of what we think is happening, is all these north and south lateral rings are going, they're growing in a spiral. These trees are actually growing in a spiral in the northern latitudes. So if you cut your quarter-sawn board out of the spiral, all these straws are going to be running this way. And all the people that fell these trees and the sawyers and the people that provide us our tops, they try to identify so that they can cut their boards with as little run out as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I can't imagine any mill wanting to cut wood because there's going to be.
Well, you have to, because so if your tree is
Now
growing,
this is what I wanted to see. This was
if
the.
your tree is growing in a spiral, if your tree is growing in a spiral, you have to you have to cut your board. So when Doug was showing us that guitar, when we were looking at the light side, we're looking down this area of all the straws. And the dark side is over here on the opposite side. You're looking into the ends of the straws.
You got to tilt that though this way.
That's
No, tilt it up diagonally.
out of whack. So you look into the light. We're looking into the light. This is all bright light.
Right.
Now we're looking into the dark. This is the dark. This is where when your knife comes in, it's going to dig in.
Right.
This is your run out. You're safe going this way, right?
Right.
This is the light side. You always want to go into the light. If you go into the dark side, you're going right into all that end grain. That's the run out.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up something. I'm going to share a screen real quick because this from my favorite book on the planet is the drawing that I learned how to do this from.
Yep.
And this is from Dan's book, if you don't recognize it. This is the best drawing I've ever seen of this, because whether you're looking at the straws or whether you're looking at a physical drawing, which I can do real quick, but the end grain is always against a flat piece of wood because that's been sawn, and you have all of these little shark fins sticking up along a flat surface. When you're looking at those straws in a round bundle, when you're talking about the side that's light, it's actually you have to skew the straws at a different angle because you're going to see the ends of all of the peaks like you are in this section over here going away from you. When we see the light side, we're seeing the light reflecting against the back end of all of those peaks. And when you're seeing the dark end, you're seeing the shadow that's being created under all of those peaks when your lighted source is coming from behind it, which is why it's difficult when you're holding a guitar. And if I stop sharing this for a minute, when you're holding a guitar trying to see that, and you're moving the guitar to try to find the light, you're moving the earth around the sun, which if you think about trees and a shadow, as the sun moves across the earth, that shadow is going to change depending on the position of the sun. So if I'm looking at a guitar and I'm changing my light source by spinning, by moving around with the guitar, my light sources are changing. So for me, I need to have a fixed light source that I can spin the guitar against. That's not me moving with the guitar. I don't want to move in the guitar's orbit. So for me, that drawing of seeing this has always crystallized it for me. That dark side over here, as you see me pointing to the screen, which doesn't help anybody, but if I move the mouse, this dark side over here, I'm seeing that all of those shadows cast from behind every little peak of grain. The light side is the light reflecting back at me. So when Dave says, go into the light, outside of thinking about a poltergeist movie, go into the light means you're always brushing the back end of the grain when you're going under your bridge. So this way you don't get accidentally trapped underneath one of those peaks and then cutting into the grain. So you always want to be the way, and he says, you always go into the light. That's fine. I always think about it from the standpoint as I'm looking, well, maybe it's just my perception of life as well, but I'm always looking to the dark side.
That drawing is rather confusing though, because that's actually saying the opposite of what I'm saying. I like the highlighted part, but the arrow should be going to the,
Yeah, but if you spin the guitar around, what's now the dark side from your
Will be the light
perspective
side, yes,
will become the light side. You're still always into the light.
yes, you're
Or
always.
at least that's how I learned.
okay, yeah, because the treble side is dark, so you are going into the light with that arrow. Yes.
Right, exactly. So like I said before, it depends on where the sun is. And if you're orbiting the sun, you have to be careful. And that's why that's where guys always get themselves into trouble about defining light and dark. So this for me, this whole thing here is not a matter of the arrows. It's a matter of this circle up here, seeing this. If I know where the dark is, I know I'm going to be following down this way, the way those peaks are pointing, and
Yep.
then up this way, the way those peaks are pointing. So this part of the picture was what always crystallized it for me. And I remember the first time. I think there was, and I think this picture showed up, if I'm not mistaken, Dan, in the second edition of your book. Correct?
Not sure.
Yeah, I don't think this was in the first direct edition of the book, but I remember seeing this in the second edition of the book, and I printed it out. I copied it and printed it out because this was for me how then I was always able to visualize it and then see it from that point forward. But yeah, I understand what Michael's saying, that it however you want to perceive it. If you always want to go into the light, you just want to make sure that you're not moving around the guitar, or the light source is not moving against you. So for me, it was always a matter of visualizing this picture where these peaks are. All of these little shark fins are moving in a direction because you're going to be moving into the light on this side. And I understand what you're saying about this arrow being confusing, but from that side of the guitar, you were moving from the lower bout to the upper bout to the next side on the treble side of this guitar, because that's the dark side. It
On
was
the
always
bass side, you would be going towards the butt of the guitar.
correct. You're starting from the neck side on the bass side, going to the butt of the guitar, and that's what you mean by going into the light.
Yeah.
But that always changed if you stood on the wrong side of the guitar.
Mhm.
You know, but that's this picture is it for me. And of course, I'm probably not. It probably wouldn't be hubris for me to assume that everybody watching this now and watching this later um, on the recorded version will likely have this book somewhere in their shop. You should go to page, I think it's 145 or 147, and cut it out and hang it on the wall, because this to me was the picture that crystallizes it for me.
If the trees just grew straight up and down and all the straws went straight up and down, it wouldn't be a issue
Well,
because every quarter sawn board would have no run out.
Or if you were buying sets of wood that were made out of split billets,
right.
because
So
by
what-
splitting it, you're ignoring the runout.
Yeah,
But-
if I split it,
Right. Wood sawyers, they do their best to avoid it. They do split it. They put wedges in. They try to crack it. But trees, through over decades there could be more of a twist in one part of the tree than the rest of the tree.
of course, these pictures here now this is from frets.com. There's a pretty easy picture to see. And if you are going by Dave's prescription of moving into the light, very much like the picture, you would be moving from the neck side to the butt end of the side of the guitar on the bass side, and on the treble side, you're moving from the the tail block towards the neck on that side.
Yep. Good example.
And here is, if I can I don't know if I can get this to. What page is it on, Danny? There we go.
In the second edition, it's on page 198.
Oh, 198. Okay, it's in second edition. I think in the new edition it's in 140 something or something like that. No, I can't remember.
There's also this.
Yes, that's another good visual.
Third edition, it's on page 145.
145, the third edition.
I have a question for everybody. It's not part of this, and you'll probably cover it in the next one. But seeing as we're all here, when you glue a bridge on with hide glue, what are your thoughts and feelings about toothing the bottom of the bridge?
I like toothing bridges. I
Dan?
have. Dan?
Me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think? You've seen more than all of us.
Oh, I doubt that, but I'm for it.
Is that what you do in your own shop?
I do.
Mhm.
So many of the great old Martins, and not necessarily Gibsons, but Martins and other of the old guitars were toothed like that.
Now, when we had TJ on, Mark Stutler was here, and we got into a little discussion towards the end about toothing. And I know that's one of those things that, there's a lot of opinions out there. But if I remember correctly, Mark Stutler was talking about not only toothing bridges, but he was also talking about toothing the top. And if I remember what he said, he had meant, and I could be wrong, but he was talking about toothing both the bridge and the top, specifically with the grain. So when you're toothing, and let me go grab my.
You wouldn't want to do it across the grain.
Of course not, because then you're cutting into the grain. But I've never toothed it. I've never toothed the top. I don't know why it never occurred to me to do so. Maybe I was just always presuming that the spruce was supple enough to not necessarily need it. But mostly I like to tooth bridges because I get to use my favorite set of tools. These guys that Stu Mac used to sell, which I wish they would again. But so he was talking about, go toothing across. Well, not across, but toothing with the grain on the bridge this way, and then toothing this way on the top. I've never considered doing the tops, and then there was a discussion about whether or not people should go across the grain and cross hatch and all of that type of stuff. And I'm presuming there probably is many opinions about that as there are people who would have them. But I do believe in toothing the bottom of, especially an ebony bridge, to give myself a little bit extra purchase power. I've never toothed a top though. Do we have any other toothers here? Luke, Dave, Danny?
I've always just kind of, normally as I'm like cleaning the top surface, it kind of gets that tooth texture anyway. So I've never bothered, purposely doing it. I kind of figure it just kind of does it on its own. I will tooth the bottom of the bridge, but lots of times, even if like I do have a couple of toothing planes, but I've honestly found just like 80 grit sandpaper, just a quick, couple swipes across with the grain kind of gives you the same pattern. They're deep enough to give you that texture.
Mhm.
But yeah, other than that, I've never done at the top.
Are you toothless or toothed, Dave?
No, I've never seen a need for it. On guitars that are newer, that the bridge falls off, it's either a bad glue joint or the guitar was not taken care of properly.
Mhm.
I mean, I've in the 19 years in repair at Taylor, I've seen plenty of 20-year-old guitars that have, with a good glue joint, the bridge doesn't even move,
Right.
and they never toothed anything. a good glue joint is gonna, survive, whether it's a brace or a bridge or a heel block or tail block or whatever. I mean, if you got a good glue joint and the guitar is taken care of, should be fine.
Right.
A manufacturer is going to try everything they can to not let those guitars come back under their warranty.
Right.
And, that's the last thing you want. Once you sell that guitar, you never want to see it back again. So they're going to try anything up their sleeve to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
So I think I don't know if there's any empirical data. I wouldn't say, I'm not saying it's bad. But I would say it's up to your own discretion.
Yeah. Like I said, I really like these, which is why I use the excuse to use them.
And as a repairman, you don't want if you re-glue a bridge and it comes back a year later, it's likely not your re-glue. It's likely the guitar was left in a hot trunk or in an attic or
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah.
something happened. It got out of the case, hot, cold weather, too humid. I mean, bridges will pop off in high humidity as well.
Yeah. If you've got a bridge reglue that you've done and that bridge is staying on the guitar by the end of the week, you don't have a problem.
If Luke reglues a bridge in Utah and sends it to Hawaii, and a year later the guy's like, "Hey, my bridge is coming off," don't be surprised. I mean, unless the guy's keeping it at 30 or 40% humidity, but that's likely not the case.
Right.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of loose bridges here just because it's the reverse. They've been humid and people are moving into Utah.
Yep.
And we're like, it rained here yesterday and we're at 25%. I mean, that gives you an idea how dry it is. And that amount of just that bridge shrinking that rapidly, it'll pop the back of the bridge up.
When the top goes flat, the bridge just flies off.
Lifts. Yeah. The other thing I've seen is I've actually seen where the bridges have physically shrunk and they won't fit the footprint anymore. Like you'll actually see them where the bridge will shrink enough that you have it's not huge, but you'll actually see a gap on the back of the bridge where it no longer is as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
So we have before we get to our last bit here, is there any questions about this stuff from anybody before we move on? Rather than ending with questions, do we have any questions before we wrap this up? Because we have one more thing to do that Dan's going to do.
I wanted to say one thing that was brought up earlier.
Yeah.
About using the Watlow pad and the aluminum form on top to heat a bridge.
Yeah.
I don't leave that on while I'm putting a palette knife underneath it.
Oh, you do take it off? You don't leave it on?
Yeah, you couldn't get it under.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to take it off and start working.
Okay.
And then put it back on if you didn't leave it long enough. Otherwise, it would be crushing that blade right into the finish with heat too. That's why I like my silicone strips.
Right.
It just kind of eases the knife underneath there, spreads the load out, and it's heat doesn't go through it.
So any takers, any more questions before we do Dan's thing? Because Dan's got one last word to
I know that I want to go out and find some of this aluminum stuff. I didn't realize Gene had it. The stuff Danny's using.
Oh, the stuff.
Yeah, I would like to put some heat on that and then see what the temperature is on the other side of it, on the underside.
Yeah, Danny just showed us that like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh, I got to get some of that myself."
I didn't even know that Gene had it right here in town.
Where did you get it, Danny? Is that Home Depot or something like that?
I think he's got a customer.
Oh.
He's removing a bridge right now.
Okay, Dan, let's take a look at what you've got for us.
Okay.
I
You are
don't think I can do it because there's nobody here now. The whole,
no.
they're out in the country with a milling machine.
Oh, okay.
I don't have anyone to hold a camera. I could try
Okay.
to get it on the phone.
Do you
Let
want
me
to try
see
to
if
do
I
that?
can do that.
Okay, why don't we try to do that?
I'll be right back.
Okay. We're gonna maybe see if Dan can demonstrate a heatless removal with just I think he's doing it with a hammer and a sickle.
It might be shocking.
That's what we used to call shocking a bridge off. I used to do some of that, you know, and it takes a little bit of gumption to do that. Have you ever done?
I've tried it once, just like on an old junker guitar, because it was like, you see the videos of it. It's like, okay, I got to try. I've had zero success with it. So, but
Hmm.
I imagine it's like with high glue bridges, because I can't
It's much-
imagine any like the tight bonds or anything.
No, it's
responding to that.
it's kind of a high glue thing that you're gonna do that with.
Yeah, and I could see it because I mean, high glue, like especially like in the high glue gets older, it starts that crystallizing and kind of breaking down a little bit. So you have some of those old bridges. I could see where that joint would be very fragile
Hmm.
because we have that, in the violin world, you get those. Um, a lot of times you can take like the fingerboards, just grab a hold of the fingerboard and just pull straight out, and it'll pop off. Like they are not on there all that tight.
So back to my questions about the heat lamp. When you're pulling, say, a fingerboard or something like that,
Mhm.
and you're down at the fingerboard extension where you've got more than just the fingerboard glue joint going on, how careful do you have to be about your heat lamp in terms of heating up an area that has related joints kind of all around it?
Not, I mean, not any more so than anything else. I mean, that's where I use, something like this. I am, guarding both sides.
Okay.
And I've never had a bad issue that way. Doesn't mean I won't. But I've never had an issue with it pulling off, and I've had a lot better luck with the heat lamp pulling off the extensions than I ever did with the blanket on
Hmm.
those, just because it seems to heat. For me, it just heats more evenly, I guess. And so like the whole thing gets hotter, and I can just get under it easier. I've had a lot less run out issues with the heat lamp than I have had with the blanket.
Hmm.
And I don't exactly know what to attribute that to. I mean, I've never had anything come apart. Like I've never had like the top release from the neck block, or I've never melted binding or anything of that nature. Because I am running the guard up past, I'm probably running and setting this up to about the 12th fret. So, the bindings, clear back underneath. So I'm not sticking any direct, heat onto it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I've never had an issue. I have had like once. I pulled one with a bound board, and I did have it did start to like soften the edges of the binding. You can kind of see where they started to round over where they used to be crisp.
Hmm.
So that was one, thing that I did notice happened, and so I have been a little more cautious about bound boards and with the heat lamp, and kind of make sure I'm really watching it and pulling it back, and let it cool just a second and put it back, so I'm not getting that binding too hot.
How we doing, Dan?
Oh, it's not going good.
Well, we can save that for next time if you want.
I'm trying to get back to where I was.
I was going to say some of the worst run out issues I've run into are when you're getting a fingerboard off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is your dark side over here. You can come in to your light side pretty effectively. But if you try to do the same thing over here, sometimes you'll get about halfway through and then you'll get a big tear out, coming right off the top.
Right.
So you need to kind of change your strategy and come in, at least break the edge and work your
Right.
way this way.
Sure.
I like the little diamond shaped ones because you can start right up there at the
Yeah.
kind of at the body junction, drive that in kind of sideways, and then work your way back down.
I mean, if
And
you
had
just
a lot of luck with that.
you just go straight in, I mean, I don't know how many times I've ripped part of the top off on them
I think we've
dark
probably
side.
all done it.
and go, I know this.
Okay, why don't we'll start with that.
It's not working.
That's fine. We can start with it next time. All right. So thank you for joining us, Michael. And if everybody could unmute and thank my panel of Lutes for joining us. We have Luke, Dave, Danny, of course, Sharon, and Dan, as always. This wraps up this edition of the D&D show, the Dan and Doug show. And so next month, we're going to be gluing bridges on. So make sure you're there for that one. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. This is super helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Fantastic.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for helping me out with this.